right, everyone. Welcome back to the Qualys Public Sector Cyber Risk Conference, produced by GovExec. Once again, my name is Emily Wolfteich, and I have the distinct pleasure of being here today with Bailey Bickley. At the forefront of an ever-evolving cyber threat landscape, the defense industrial base confronts persistent attempts by adversaries to breach critical systems and compromise sensitive data. To counter this mounting risk, the Department of Defense has launched CMMC 2.0, an ambitious framework crafted to bolster the DIB against this rising tide of sophisticated cyber threats. This proactive initiative is serving as a shield for DIB's sensitive, unclassified information and ensuring that frontline warfighters have the secure data crucial for effective mission execution. We're very excited to have with us today National Security Agency's Chief DIB Defense Cybersecurity Collaboration Center, Bailey Bickley, to explore this dynamic cybersecurity ecosystem and to offer valuable insights as to how your organization is integrating CMMC into DIB operations. Bailey, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Let's start by jumping into the role and operations of this NSA Collaboration Center. Can you tell us a little bit about how it functions and how it contributes to sort of fortifying the DIB?
Yeah, sure. So thanks everybody for coming. It's good to see you and some familiar faces. So for those that aren't intimately familiar with NSA, we've had two missions since our inception. And the first one is code making, so producing the keys, codes, and cryptography that protects our nation's most sensitive systems. And the second mission is code breaking, so intercepting the signals of our adversaries overseas, decrypting them, and then using that to understand what are our adversaries' plans, intentions, capabilities, including in cyber. And so what we realized is that within the United States defense industrial base, right now what we don't have is a fair fight, because we have a broad ecosystem of companies that are supporting the DoD, that are manufacturing critical components for warfighting systems and just moving cargo in and out of conflict zones. And the majority of the DIB, 70% of it, is small businesses. And so these companies are signing a contract with DoD and they're becoming the target of nation-state malicious cyber activity. And so, the DoD really took a step back and said, we can't expect a small business to defend against, adversary like the People's Republic of China alone. We have to do a better job of helping them. They deserve to have, the government on their side. And so that was part of the logic that led to the stand-up of the NSA Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. And so we do a couple different things, but I think two things will be most relevant for this audience. First, we focus on sharing NSA intelligence with high-impact partners. So what that means is that when we know what a nation state, what malware they might be using, what vulnerabilities they might be exploiting, we want to rapidly declassify or sanitize that information and share it with industry so that they can build and scale prevention, detection, and mitigation techniques. At the end of the day, small businesses are all relying on like a core subset of technology products. So if we can make those technology products better, we have an impact that scales, and that's how we kind of are able to achieve that broad mission outcome. But the other thing that we do is we also go to those small businesses that we know are likely to be targeted, and we're able to provide them with direct cybersecurity assistance and support, whether that's in the form of services that they enroll in that help them protect their networks, or even just joining a collaboration channel with NSA and being able to submit company-specific questions to our analysts. And so the whole point is, if we know something that's actionable, we need to reduce the time to get that information out there. And so that's our job and our role in this space, and I think it's going really well.
So with so many different partners and so many different priorities, how do compliance and governance structures sort of factor into that? How have they impacted these cybersecurity practices? Yeah,
it's interesting. So to kind of set the stage here, compliance for the defense industrial base is managed by DoD CIO. We're able to advise in that area, but it's not something that we're leading. But what I would say is a couple things. First, our adversaries have a lot of resources to do mass scanning of the internet, mass exploitation, and mass data exfiltration. And so the first thing that compliance can do is make sure that these companies are not an easy target. If you haven't done the basics, you're going to be compromised. And so there's a benefit from that regard. People say compliance isn't security, which I completely agree with, but compliance definitely helps security. The second thing that I think it does that can be really, really helpful is it creates a baseline for companies, so we know everyone is kind of starting at the same level, and we can measure from there, and we can see how adversaries adopt their tactics and techniques. As our defenses evolve, so do theirs, but we have to all kind of be starting from the same spot so that we can have a really strong defense against these actors. The final thing I would say is, people, I think, are frustrated, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the compliance space, but the rules and the controls associated with some of the compliance mechanisms, they have a real impact. And they're only a small subset of what NSA does to protect our own systems. And so I think from my perspective, one of the things I tell people is, yes, cyber is hard and it costs money and it's challenging. We've been doing this for a long time, we know. But this isn't something that just came out of nowhere. It's something that I believe the department feels will have a very, very real impact on the adversary and on protecting sensitive DoD information.
Are there any lessons you've learned so far in this process about what works, what doesn't?
Yeah, to be honest with you guys, the first lesson I learned is changing how I communicate. And I'm still working on this, but so a little bit of background, I've been at NSA for 16 years, worked across 2 intelligence community agencies, and every day we see nation state actors targeting these small mom and pop shops. That's very real to us. And so when I meet with companies in the DIB, that's what I always lead with is, you're a target and we want to help you. And it's funny because their eyes just glaze over, and most small businesses don't view the People's Republic of China as like the existential threat to their networks. They view compliance as their #1 priority. And so from our perspective, we've worked really hard to say, okay, we've developed a suite of services that defend against the People's Republic of China and Russia and ransomware crews, but how do we map those back to compliance regimes, so to speak, and how do we articulate to the community, we're not asking you to do something in addition to what's already, written into your contract, rather we're offering free solutions that have both a security benefit and a compliance benefit as well. So for me, it's definitely my #1 lesson learned has been the communication.
Are there you said that their eyes glaze over, and surely people who are working in small Wyoming are not thinking of the PRC as their #1 target. Do you find that some people are resistant to that message, or is it something that once they get how it connects, then it becomes a simpler process?
I think people have been, the extent to which they're resistant is just, they're like, this doesn't help me. Sell my board on this idea. They're not, this isn't something that my board cares about. They care about their bottom line and their revenue. And so, people haven't been resistant to what we're trying to do, but, what I get from companies is help me help you, package it in a way that I can easily convince my stakeholders that we should do this.
Right. So what measures are in place to sort of ensure that these small and medium-sized businesses that you're working with are adequately prepared to meet these requirements, these compliance requirements?
Sure, so I'll highlight a couple. First, NSA's own program, the Cybersecurity Collaboration Center. So we offer 3, soon to be 4 services that address network security, but also map back to NIST 800-171 controls, so they have that dual benefit. The first one that we offer is something called Protective DNS or PDNS Plus. And so what we saw was, if you aren't familiar with DNS, the domain name system, it's essentially the address book of the internet. And so if I type in a human readable address like nsa.gov, DNS is what translates that to a machine readable IP address and gets you to where you're trying to go. And because DNS was built in the early days of the internet, it's both pervasive and it's wildly insecure. And so we saw adversaries frequently using and abusing DNS to gain access to sensitive systems, do data exfil, and even install malware. And so what PDNS does is it simply runs every DNS query through a threat feed prior to resolving it. We call our service PDNS Plus because every week we are updating our block list with indicators of known bad activity that are derived from NSA's signals intelligence mission or our analytics. And so again, that goes back to what do we know our nation state adversaries are doing overseas. Let's take that, let's sanitize it, let's defend against it. And so for that, we've seen 2 billion blocks of malicious cyber activity. 70 million of those blocks have come from NSA-provided IOCs. The second service that we offer is threat intelligence collaboration. This is simply a unclassified, DIB-specific NSA threat intelligence reporting that we're able to share directly with companies. And then the third service that we offer is something called attack surface management, where we're trying to help companies identify their internet-facing assets, do vulnerability scans across them, but then prioritize the issues that we found based off what we know nation-state actors are currently exploiting. DC3, which is a part of DoD proper, also has services like this that have security and compliance benefits for the DIB. And what we've really tried to do is make sure that we have slick sheets, and on our websites we're articulating this is a security benefit, but also these are the NIST 800-171 controls and control groups that these services help to satisfy.
So sort of thinking about where we are now and looking forward, what do you think are the next steps for your agency in trying to grow the DIB and trying to reach out to different small businesses that might be interested in joining you?
Yeah, I think for us, what we're really focused on right now is scaling our offerings, but in a way that is very strategic. So we have more than 1,000 customers currently enrolled in the services, which is fantastic. It's a milestone for us, but the DIB is vast. It's 300,000 companies, and that number changes and fluctuates every day based on contracts. And so for us, we need to make sure we're defending as much of the DIB as we can. Again, a lot of that comes through the direct collaboration and IOC sharing with technology companies, cybersecurity companies, cloud, ISPs. But then for the services, how do we find those small companies that are most likely to be targeted? And how do we prioritize our outreach for them? For me specifically, I'm looking at who are the second and third tier suppliers or manufacturers that are producing critical components to weapon systems that DoD relies upon, or maybe who are transcoms, priority carriers, or what companies is Indo-PACOM relying on in the Pacific Defense region. So really just making sure we get the message out, but we enroll the companies that would really benefit from this the most.
Great. And just one last question. What are you excited about in this space? What is something that's coming up either in your organization or that you see more broadly sort of around both compliance but also involving these smaller businesses in the mission?
I think two things. This might be a little cheesy, but again, I've worked at NSA for 16 years. We've done cyber for a long time. We like to say we were doing cyber since, before it was cool. And so for me, I get excited to see how cyber has become like a kitchen table issue. I mean, there's so much energy around it in both industry, government, Congress, and so it's cool to see the real progress we're making, especially through several of the national security memorandums that have been released, driving us towards post-quantum cryptography, which I heard the previous panel talk about. I'm really excited about that. The United States is leading the world in making this transition to post-quantum cryptography, and it's absolutely critical that we do so. So yeah, it's those two things, and I think on the post-quantum cryptography, the note I would end on is, you know, NSA is driving this transition for our nation's most sensitive systems, but we don't want to leave anybody behind. The defense industrial base absolutely needs to make this transition as well. And so what we've done is we've tried to share all of the guidance we're sharing with our national security customers with the public as well. We've actually put them on our website. So if you go nsa.gov/cyber, there's a page dedicated to post-quantum, and you can find the algorithms that we're going to be using for national security systems. You can find frequently asked questions, information about our own timelines, and so I would just encourage the community to get involved in that effort. You have to start sooner than later because it takes so much time, and yeah, that's something that I'm excited about.
Great.
So.
Thank you so much, Bailey, for sharing your insights with us today. I really appreciate your time and your comments.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody.